The sun may be shining on your end of things. It's raining on my end, but that doesn't dampen the excitement that I have for our conversation today about FAFSA data and how we can use that to support our students, our Michigan Community College students. My name is Precious Miller, and I am the coordinator of My Best. I have the pleasure of working with Michigan Center for Student Success, and I'd love to introduce you guys to the amazing colleagues that I have the opportunity to work with every day, Jenny Shanker and Erica Oriens. It is a pleasure to have you guys here and to work alongside you. There are some individuals on this call who I'm familiar with and some whom I am meeting for the first time. I'd love to give you guys an opportunity to begin to become familiar with each other, where you guys work, what institution or organization you represent. So now would be a good time to navigate to your chat function and place your name and your title in the chat so everyone can get a sense of where you are and the work that you're able to do. And we'll begin our conversation being able to collaborate with one another. If you haven't done so already, you can rename yourself so that your institution is represented in your name. We're going to be doing a lot of cross-sharing between colleges today. And so it would be helpful for your colleagues across the state to get an idea of what institution you represent, but it's also a way for your colleagues to also connect with you beyond today's call. I think that we learn the best through connection and relationships, and we get more done that way. And so this is one way you can collaborate with your colleagues across the state. So we are going to jump in our conversation today with the support and a warm welcome by Candy Lizelle. She works with MyLeap as the program specialist. Candy oversees the MyLeap grant, and I thought it was really helpful and timely for us to bring in the perspective of the MyLeap grant and the ways in which the grant can support the non-academic barriers of students, but also some of those academic financial things that students are navigating. We're talking about FAFSA data and understanding the cost of attendance, but sometimes those costs go beyond that of a textbook or class supplies. Sometimes that's transportation or childcare. And so the MyLeap grant has some capacity to support students in that way as we think about ways that we can target our communication and outreach to support the academic and non-academic barriers to students, and that being sometimes financial concerns. So I will turn it over to you, Candy, to share more about the MyLeap grant and any other information that would be helpful for our audience today.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you so much, Precious. Well, again, my name is Candy Cobb-Flesch-Lizelle, and I am the MyLeap grant program specialist. And I'm here with my colleague, Erica Latuzinski, and she's the MyLeap analyst, and she's kind of doing the controls here, but I'm going to turn it over to her in just a little bit. But we developed this flyer here today to give you a MyLeap grant commercial, since we're talking about services for students and how to best serve our students and how to get them the proper dollars they need to get through college and training. We are one of the elite 8 states. So Michigan is one of 8 states who received this award from the U.S. Department of Education. And I think part of the reason why Michigan received this grant is because we are targeting the hardest hit population by the pandemic. And by that, I mean those people who are the working poor. So they're one paycheck away from not being able to put dinner on the table, or, you know, if they get a flat tire, they can't make it to class, that sort of thing. So those are the general population that we're targeting. But I also don't want you to think that it's just geared for those students. It isn't. So the big grant is called the Reimagine Workforce grant, and it's offered to us from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, also known as the CARES Act. So these are our federal tax dollars going to work for our students. So the gist of the grant is to provide quick training and education programs so that students can fill high need, high skill, high tech, in demand jobs. That's pretty much what we want to do. It can be braided with other grants as well. And so we like to call this crossing the finish line funding for our students, because, you know, again, they may be a flat tire away from not being able to get to class. They may have children that they can't pay for a babysitter or childcare. So they're looking for that kind of funding to help them get through college, get through their training. We promised the federal government that we would help 4,450 Michigan citizens. And the key here is that they do have to have a high school diploma or some kind of high school equivalency in order to get this funding from the federal government. And so pretty much, you know, there aren't too many restrictions on this grant, which our partners really love. And so our partners, Erica, if you want to scroll down a little bit. So here are our partners. So it is a partnership grant. And so again, we work for the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. And there are 8 Michigan Works agencies and 2 community colleges that are the sub-grantees of this grant. And it was required that workforce development agencies and then either institutions that have the Perkins grant and employers have to be in this partnership. So those are the partnerships around the state. Also, you know, we can have different folks like nonprofits, unions, and those folks that can partner with us too. And we actually encourage that because that's what we're trying to do. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Erica, so she can tell you a little bit about, you know, what we're looking for and who this money can help.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Ladesinski. So basically, this grant is tailored towards anyone who is impacted by COVID or who is underemployed, unemployed, an essential worker, a single parent. So the parameters are very inclusive. And that's what we tell our subgrantees. If they don't fit any of the check boxes that you see, like find another way to include them because we're trying to get as many people help as possible. So if a student is eligible, the grant funds can be used for a wide variety of things, but I'm going to focus on participant costs. So MyLeap will cover up to or on average $3,000 per participant. So it is meant to be last dollar funding or braided with other programs like WIOA to help cover things that those other programs won't typically cover. So it can be used to cover costs of training and educational programs, also supportive services. But the cool thing about MyLeap is it can cover childcare, transportation vouchers, equipment, supplies, books, uniforms, and protective gear. So it's really meant to help students who maybe have already gone through a program really excel into their professional career. And so we are also partnered with employers. So the goal is that when we have a participant go through our program, they then have an in to potential employment, and it's all high skill, high wage employment. So, and it does tie back to the FAFSA because that was one of the things we promised the federal government was that if we had any students come through that were enrolled into programs that were eligible for Pell Grant funding, that they complete a FAFSA and then help. And then that way, once they get through their training, they could see what dollars they're eligible for, and then hopefully continue in their educational career past the funding that they got from MyLeap.
So that's why we like to call it crossing the finish line funding. We've had a lot of really great stories from our participants. One in particular that we love to tell you is that there was a nursing student. She was getting her RN degree. For some reason, life happens, and she had one semester to go and she wasn't going to be able to finish that semester. And MyLeap funding kicked in to help her complete. So now we have an RN in one of our nurses in a nursing program, and now she's working at a hospital in Michigan. So that's one of the great stories that we like to tell. But there are so many others. Again, with this funding, it's kind of fun to work with this because our partners are happy with it, and so are our participants. So we really appreciate you, Precious, for letting us give a quick commercial to our community college friends to let them know about this grant.
It's my pleasure, Candy. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how colleges can connect with you, or what's the natural next step if they're interested?
Right. So thank you for asking and telling us that. Right. So it is a partnership, as we told you. So the partnerships have already been established. However, if you're not a partner community college and you'd like to be, yes, please give us a shout, and then we'll connect you with whichever region is your service region and see if they're willing to take you on as a partner. I'm sure they are, because like I said, we promised the federal government we would help 4,450 students. And again, right now we're due to sunset this grant in June of 2023. Our federal program manager tells us that, you know, we will get extensions, but we haven't received that okay yet. So it is, you know, a quick grant that we're trying to get through to Michigan and get to as many citizens as possible. So
Okay.
please give us a call or an email if you're interested.
Candy, would you mind placing your contact information in the chat?
Got it. You
for-
got it.
Thank you. And then for
Uh-huh.
all of you who are joined here, I will also be sure to forward her Candy's contact information in the follow-up email that goes out along with the flyer and the recording link for today's webinar.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Precious.
Yes, my pleasure. Any questions from our audience before you take off? Okay, well, if you guys are anything like me, questions come pouring in when a student's sitting across from me, and that is okay. I make myself available to you and can be sure to connect you with Candy if you're not able to capture her contact information in the chat. Thank you so much, Candy and Erica, for your time today. I appreciate you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, so we are left to have some fun and talk about financial aid, everyone's favorite topic. I am navigating back to the PowerPoint, so we are going to be using the PowerPoint as a guide for our conversation today. And again, it's based on the Dear Colleague letter that was sent out. I believe it was sent early January of this year. Let's see here. Can you guys see my screen?
We can see it, but there's a gray box in front of it.
Okay.
That wasn't there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try. I'm sorry, guys. This is the first time this has ever happened to me, and I can't see any of you.
Yeah, it's like we can see I can even see where you're sharing your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
The purpose of the letter is to give us some clarification on a new way of supporting students who have needs. Traditionally or historically, FAFSA data was private and protected. When students complete their FAFSA, that was information that was not broadly shared across the institution, and most certainly not to student services. The Dear Colleague letter, however, states that it's encouraged for financial aid to share some of that protective data for students who have a 0 EFC, so that we can have targeted communication sent to the students who otherwise might not have the financial means to long-term afford their classes. And so that is the purpose of today's call, to join colleges across the state together to begin talking about, okay, what does this mean for us? What's the best way to connect with students? And how can we do that equitably so that we are supporting the students who have the greatest need and are stretching out the funds equitably to those students? So in the PowerPoint, we will be taking notes based on a conversation amongst us, but we've also partnered with some colleagues across the country, most specifically in California. They have been able to reach their students who qualify for their state benefits. In Michigan, we call it My Bridges or SNAP. In California, they call it CalFresh. And so what they've done is they've been able to scale their communication strategies to ensure that they're supporting students who have the greatest need and have developed a communication strategy for that. with the colleagues across the country. They're in different time zones and have various schedules. And so they weren't able to join us live, but they were able to lend their expertise and experience with me. And I recorded our conversation via Zoom so that we could talk about their remarks collectively as a college and as colleges, and talk about whether or not the strategies that work for them in California with CalFresh could work for us in Michigan with connecting students to SNAP or FAP. So Erica, the YouTube link I can put in the chat and we can view it from your end of things. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. And then there are some gray boxes. Okay, hello, Michigan Community Colleges. I am thrilled to be joined with some amazing individuals that I can now call colleagues in the state of Michigan who are here joining us today. And I am interested to learn more from you, Allison and Rosa. Can you both quickly summarize can you summarize and outline the steps you take to using FAFSA data to connect students to CalFresh?
Thank you, Precious. Yes, so at MiraCosta College, we're able to query off of the FAFSA applications that come into our system. So we are a PeopleSoft school, that is the student administration platform that we use. And we are able to develop queries where we can identify certain items off of the FAFSA to identify potentially eligible students. So we've created separate queries to identify students that are eligible for the federal work-study program, and then also students who have the 0 EFC. When we're able to pull those lists, we can further filter them down to see who is currently enrolled versus just the amount of applications that actually come into our system. And then what we do is partner with our CARE program, share that information. So it is allowed under FERPA and the school official exception. So we are able to share that information, and we turn that over to our CARE team, and they are the ones that have performed the majority of the outreach to notify the students that they are potentially eligible for the CalFresh program.
Thank you, Precious. So my name is Rosie. I'm a manager here at Mount SAC in the financial aid office. And what we do is we partnered with our basic needs resources team and office to support them in identifying students that may be eligible for CalFresh. So our assistant director specifically is able to query, just like Allison kind of stated, we use our, our system information, we use Banner to query students who have a 0 EFC. But a little different from MiraCosta is we actually email those students directly from the financial aid office email address. So what we do, instead of turning over the report over to basic needs resources, we've actually collaboratively developed a letter. Basically, it would be kind of a confirmation letter that they are 0 EFC and may potentially be eligible for CalFresh benefits. And so this letter is coming from the financial aid office directly to these students. So we email them all, here's your letter, you have been confirmed that you have a 0 EFC and may be potentially eligible for CalFresh benefits. In the letter, and in the email, we specifically let students know that they do need to follow up or to obtain more support from our basic needs resources office, which is Rigo's team. They will actually follow up, assist students in applying, and keep that data. As far as applications, and Rigo, if you want to chime in, you're more than welcome to do that. But we found that it's a really easy, seamless process. We run the query, we email our students with this confirmation letter, let them know that they want to follow up with our basic needs resources, and Rigo and his team, they kind of do the rest of the work.
Could either of you expand? Okay. So we're going to navigate back to the PowerPoint and just kind of talk through some of the things that they shared. This is the first this is a list of all of the questions that we're going to go through as a collective today. So separating it to the next slide and talking about the first question specifically, what steps do you take in using FAFSA data to connect students to local, state, and federal resources was the question I posed to California. And the question that I'm posing to you all today, or perhaps you could share some of the things that resonated with California colleges that think might work for your institution. So I'll just kind of leave it open for you guys to start answering those questions.
That's the stuff that I kind of already am doing here at West Shore Community College. I sent out an email to the faculty instead of the students. I didn't get the list of students, but if I could have, I would have, but I sent it out to every faculty so that they knew that I was here at the school. And I am the resource coordinator, so I can help the students financially in any way I can. But that's how I started.
Okay. Linda, I see that your hand was also raised.
Yeah, we certainly use the FAFSA data in administering the higher education grants to students from the CARES Act and the 2 acts that followed that gave direct funding for students. So that, I think, is an example of kind of a one-time thing or a 3-time thing in this case. I did want to raise the question. My understanding of the Dear Colleague letter is that it doesn't change any of the regulations. It doesn't change FERPA or the federal student aid regulations about data sharing. And so in the video, I think Rosie was the second person that talked. Excuse me. She talked about the financial aid office directly reaching out to the students. And that's the approach that we're taking. So we've had a lot of discussion and a lot of requests for lists of students, but my reading of the federal student aid law is that we can't share those lists unless it's for administration of actual financial aid.
Yes and yes, Linda. My understanding is that it's not changing the rules and regulations that are currently in play. My perspective of the letter is that this is something you could do, and we're not going to slap your hand if you choose to do it. I think the approach that Rosie took is one way to do it. I don't think that there is a right or wrong way necessarily with this, because the goal is to put finances and resources into the hands of students. The way that you go about that is going to vary by college, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, maybe other financial aid people can chime in, but I wouldn't. I don't know. I think there is a right and wrong way. I think there is a law, and most of us have been familiar with Dear Colleague letters for long enough to know. I think what they're saying is you already have a lot of flexibility. Here's how you can use it. Not go ahead and override, what you know to be the law. So that I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor it, but that's been a concern of mine with a lot of requests that we're getting. And I really want to get this information to the students. So I'm happy to do it directly out of the financial aid office. But I just think that is a big concern for financial aid offices to kind of hold the line on that. May not be a very popular stance.
But I think that's the beauty of this call, right? To see what everyone else is doing and to get everyone's opinion on how we can best approach and address this. So what are some other thoughts? What are other colleges doing?
I also team up with Michigan Works. My goal, I work for United Way also. That's my main source. And I team up with Michigan Works, and they're my main goal is to spend all of their money every year. So I actually am United Way and I sit at West Shore Community College.
Great. Anything else to add before we move on to the next question? Okay, Erica, we can segue back to the YouTube video and look at question number 2. And on how frequently you connect with students or contact them.
Sure, I'll go first. So Rigo, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do identify students at the beginning of each term. So each term we will query, again, our FAFSA applicants and identify those 0 EFC students. And then at Rigo's request or Basic Needs Resources Office request, we'll email them. I believe the frequency right now is once a term.
Okay, great.
Yes, and it's similar at MiraCosta as well. At the beginning of each semester, we will run those queries and pass that information along. And similar to what Rosie was explaining, the email doesn't come from the financial aid office. It actually comes from the care team, but it does contain similar information as far as being eligible for CalFresh and where to do the follow-up. And because Devin and his care team are sort of the experts in that area, we've thought it would be more appropriate for our students for the email to come directly from them as opposed to financial aid. Our financial aid office sends out quite a few emails to students, especially at the beginning of the term. And so that's the reason why we haven't actually go through them.
Okay, thank you both for your remarks. Rigo, I'd love for you to join us in the conversation and share a little bit about what campus partnerships are most essential to make sure that you're reaching students.
Thank you, Precious. Yeah, so an obvious one is going to be financial aid. The strong partnership that we've been able to build, the financial aid team starts with being part of our basic needs committee and provided their insight and their suggestions and helping our program be able to better assist and reach out to students. When we talk about CalFresh specifically, there are special student eligibility requirements for them to be eligible for CalFresh. For a student, it's difficult to receive CalFresh benefits, but there are exemptions if the student is not working. So we focus on collaborating with those programs on campus that provide the student a higher chance of being eligible for CalFresh. We're talking about our EOPS program, our REACH Guardian Scholar program that provides services to our foster youth, and additional programs that we've worked to include on the list of exempt programs. Those include our student-specific SEED program that supports students in providing employment opportunities on campus, our work study through financial aid as well, and a few additional programs on campus. The goal is to collaborate with these programs and ensure that we're reaching out specifically to students that we know are already meeting the student eligibility requirements and hoping and working with them to look into the other eligibility requirements. That ensures that we're meeting the appropriate targets that are eligible for CalFresh.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So question number 2. What partnerships are most essential to ensure that you are reaching students? I was in a webinar, I believe it was last week, and someone had made mention that student service offices don't regularly have meetings with financial aid, and thought that that would be a key way to foster a partnership between financial aid and those who are doing direct outreach to students. So I'm wondering if that's something you guys are doing and might see value in that, or if there are other partnerships on campus that help you connect with students.
Hi, Megan Vineyard here from Macomb Community College. And definitely with the financial aid office, but also with our student life and leadership. That is the area on campus that actually runs our food pantry. So being able to partner with them, especially in terms of things to reach students who might need some extra supports has been really helpful.
Megan, can I ask, are the staff at the Student Life and Leadership, are they aware of or trained on that they can refer students to MyBridges to apply for SNAP or FAP?
Yes, it is part of they have a really short intake that they ask students to complete just with their basic contact information. And they do ask on that, are you currently receiving any public benefits? And that's mostly to refer them in case they aren't receiving those benefits that they're eligible for, to either send them to my office so we can get them started with MyBridges, or just to let them know, hey, you're coming to the food pantry, maybe you need some extra supports, and these are some things that you can look into. So we've worked really closely with them for years, ever since we were started as a program, to have a good partnership to refer students back and forth.
Thank you.
At NMC, we have enrollment management and student services, all reports to one vice president. So we're structurally together. And under that, we also have student life, student success coaches, all of those supports, tutoring, advising, and then financial aid and all of enrollment services. And so we have developed very close collaboration with those different groups. Precious, you heard last week at our check-in with Lisa Thomas, our student life area and our financial aid area. Judy is also on this call. We have worked together to develop an emergency assistance application where students can make their needs known. And then we have a pretty large committee made up of both offices so that we can work through it together. And it's really been eye-opening, I think, as to the types of challenges students have, but how we can work together. And sometimes the solution is a financial aid solution. Sometimes it's a student life counseling and resource connection solution. And then most of the time it's both, actually.
Anything else for this question before we move on to question 2 or question 3?
Yeah. West Shore kind of does it the same way. Also, I was going to actually go and reach out to the students that are juniors and seniors in high school, since you can coincide we have a promise that they get to have, if they have a 2 or better, they get to come to 2 years of West Shore Community College for free. But since you can take the Michigan from Michigan Works, the MyLeap, you can take that and put it right with their free tuition they already have. And that extends what they can actually do with it. And it's amazing. I use that every day.
Thank you, Megan, Linda, and Molly, for your sharing for question 2. Thank you. Devin, could you share how you formulate partnerships with your local Department of Health and Human Services?
Of course. So thanks for having me out. I'm Devin. I'm the Director of Care at Miracosta College. So how we went about formulating partnerships with our local Department of Health and Human Services was through an organization called San Diego Hunger Coalition. And they're kind of like I wouldn't say governing body, but a large force in bringing together nonprofit partners and the local Department of Health and Human Services. And through Sending a Hunger Coalition is where myself and my team got trained on how to provide CalFresh application assistance, but also provided that direct connection with our local Health and Human Services department. So through that, we've been able to invite them out to table at our farmers market events, which we know is going to yield a lot of students coming and, interacting with the care team and other community providers. And so just through having them, present on campus, we've been able to formulate a partnership to where their outreach team within the local Department of Health and Human Services have individuals who can also provide CalFresh application assistance on the spot, print out EBT cards. So making it really accessible for the students to apply that day and receive their benefits. And so that's something that we're working closely on them now is how do we kind of expand and build that out to where it is a specific event for students to come get that CalFresh application assistance right on the spot with the local Department of Health and Human Services.
Wonderful. Thank you for your remarks. Rigo, I'm going to turn things back over to you. Okay, so what communication strategies are most effective in informing students of the resources available, either on campus or off campus? Yes, Erica, I thought that was a really neat idea too, inviting students to, or inviting DHHS to farmers markets where students are frequenting. What other strategies do you guys think could help? Do you have any like a direct partnership with MDHHS? Or someone that you can call with questions? Is that a yes, Molly?
Yeah, we have actually, I have CMH right next to me. I don't know if that and United Way is here. So they actually put us into West Shore Community College. We actually work for other places. My paycheck comes from United Way. So, but I do fund the students through my community resource position. I guess they come to me from everywhere. Our retention program, that's huge here at the school. It's kind of like what she was explaining about earlier, but we do have a retention program where everybody in the whole entire school can send me stuff right through the computer, and it pops right up right on my phone.
Okay.
And then if it needs to go to CMH next door, if they need counseling, I just send them next door, and they don't have to leave the campus because we're kind of set out in the middle of the country.
Mm-hmm. We call those a warm handoff, where
Yep.
you just directly connect the student to the next resource.
And they stuck us out. We're up in the testing center, so we're in an actual. If anyone explodes, they're going to do it here in the testing center. So that's where I am. I'm right in the center of where everyone takes their nursing exams. That's what they're doing today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think we all have been challenged with sending emails out, trying to make students aware of opportunities that we don't get the sense that works very well. Getting them to open and read and understand it applies to them and all of that. So like Molly was saying, I think the approach of having everyone on campus be alert to students experiencing challenges and to resources, not in detail, but to understand where to send them for the resources, has been successful at our campus.
Text messages are huge too. They don't read their emails anymore. It's on the spot. I mean, they're on their phones more than anything. And if they don't get that text message, there's something wrong.
we had a public policy and associates facilitated some focus groups for us a little while back in the My Best project, and they had shared that email and text are great ways. Students had shared that email and text are great ways to connect with them. They shared that connecting or sending those means of communications at various times of the semester is something else that they would benefit from. So if they don't receive the email or text at the beginning of the semester, sending it, a month or two later, or just at those breaks in the semester where they break for winter recess and come back after the spring semester or winter semester. So those are some additional ideas that students have shared were good for them.
We still do both. We still send the emails, even though we sometimes feel they don't do a great deal of good, but I think it's the majority read them. And that's what you're seeing in that kind of survey. But the ones that come to us in crisis that haven't read them kind of weights it in our minds that we think nobody's reading our email because those are the people we see.
Right.
But, we continue to try to find different ways and timing, like you said, getting it out there at the right time when they're not just trying to find their classes at the beginning of the semester and get their books and everything, but a little later on, maybe.
Yeah.
Also, I was going to try to connect with the students, like I was trying to say that earlier, I think, in high school, at the junior and senior levels, to let them know that that money is out there so they can start then and start thinking about it. And I was going to try to, I don't have anything set up yet, but I was going to get with Michigan Works and the MyLeap program and have her come with me. And she can also explain the Michigan Works programs and our top 40, I always have this on my desk, the top 40 high demand jobs that I have. I have all the lists, and the students love to come and look at that and see what jobs that they might benefit from out in our community if they want to stick around here, which most of them usually are trying to. Nowadays, you can't go anywhere. There's not enough money to move.
Yeah. If only I could move to somewhere warm, like the Bahamas, maybe, I totally would. Okay, we have 2 more questions. The next one, we can go back to the YouTube video. I know this is a growth area, an opportunity of growth, but could you share a little bit about communication strategies that you're using that you find to be really effective to inform students about CalFresh and the resources available to them?
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, it is an area of growth. One of the unique challenges that we have at Mount San Antonio College is beyond being the largest single district campus in California. When you include our non-credit student population, we're looking pre-COVID at almost 60,000 students on campus at any given time. It's hard to reach students, right, and using one single mode of communication. What we leaned on specifically during the COVID time and going remotely is really trying to access our social media platforms, specifically our Instagram account, which tends to be kind of the platform that is accessed by majority of our student population, and providing CalFresh information and overall basic needs resources information through that social media platform. And our email communication with students, I think we discussed it offline about just our retention to information, and when we tend to send long emails, how challenging that can be for a student to be able to grasp the information. So also creating short themed messages through our communication via email, through their portals, has been something productive. But as we talked about, there seems to be a group, a population on campus that we're unable to reach, specifically our non-credit students. When they visit and share, that they're more picking up through word of mouth. But that tends to be a little slower in the way they get information. So that's kind of the range of communication that we use on our campus.
Well, I'd like to suggest that communication is an area that we're all growing in because we're all human and no one's exempt from the human experience. And so I'm really appreciative of you sharing how the communication channels and using social media has been successful for your students and your institution. Are there any additional remarks or aha moments or anything that you panelists would like to share with Michigan Community Colleges?
Yeah, I'd like to share something. I think Devin touched on the importance of community partnerships, specifically when we try to embed social services or other support system for our student population within institutions of higher learning. Similar to Devin and their partnership with the organization in San Diego, we have a partnership / contract with our organization called the Center for Healthy Communities through Chico State. This organization has really provided us technical and training support that allows us to reach way many students than we used to before. This organization has the capacity to build additional partnerships that provide us support. With our letter that Rosie had mentioned earlier that is sent out to students, we provide in that letter the opportunity for the student to apply to for CalFresh benefits or SNAP benefits by themselves at their own pace in a very user-friendly approach with an organization called getcalfresh.org. And this personalized link allows those students that apply to be attached to our institution so that our team can provide the follow-up phone call, the follow-up conversation to ensure that the students are submitting their documents, to prep a student through the interview process. So finding those, I think, community organizations that can provide these type of technical and training support are going to be valuable for us in institutions of higher learning.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you all for sharing your time with us today. Okay, so we did already talk about effective communication strategies. I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to watch the rest of the video. The last question that we have is not addressed by our panelists, but something that might be worthwhile for us to talk about as a collective. And that question is, when there is a high volume of students in need, how do you disperse resources equitably?
One thing that I can share that we did at Macomb with the CARES and the HERF funding, we used the FAFSA data, and we also we altered our methods a couple times because there were so many dollars to disperse. But one of the first things that we did was use our established process for our SOS program, where students can look at a form and there's just check boxes with what areas do you have concerns about. And the amount of funds that students received kind of depended on what they indicated that they were having challenges with. Was it just some gas funding, or is it gas and housing and childcare? So that was one thing that we looked at. And then there was also some more one-on-one working with students that indicated a very high level of need. There was a little bit more long-term working with those students. So that was one thing that we did, again, in addition to the FAFSA data for those funds.
We did the same thing at Northwestern Michigan College. We used an application. At first, we tried a lot of different things. Later on, when there was more and more money coming, we ended up giving it to all students, assuming that the FAFSA data was 2 years old, and we may not be reaching if we just limited it to the most needy students per the FAFSA. A lot of students' situation may have changed in those 2 years. So we gave more money to those that had a Pell grant eligible EFC, but we did give it to everyone in one of those allotments.
Linda, I'll add to your comment there. I mean, I know we're talking about using that FAFSA data today to reach out to students, but when we disaggregate student outcomes, and many of you do as well, using the voluntary framework of accountability, you've probably noticed, like we have, that the outcomes for students who are Pell and non-Pell recipients are not that different. And I think that's really, it's puzzling in some ways, but it also is interesting to think that even students who, and I use the term Pell eligible just because that's, like my muscle memory is to do that, but not all of our students have applied for are using the FAFSA, have applied for aid. And some of them may have exhausted aid, but that doesn't mean that they don't have need, a financial need or an emergency need as well. So I think you make a really good point that, using the FAFSA data is helpful, but it isn't necessarily sufficient to reach all the students who might have need.
With just a few minutes remaining, anything else to add?
I'll just add, Precious, I think you and I have observed this over the last year or so. We've seen all of our colleges do so much tremendous work in this space to connect students with basic needs and expand their food pantries and connect with My Bridges. And there's just been a tremendous amount of progress at college campuses. But I could hear from our colleagues in California, and then those of you talking on this call, that there's still a great need to be better at communicating with students. And I think that just seems to be so consistent in this project and across a lot of our projects, that we do great work. And there's so many great resources available. And it sounds like you are all, and I'm glad we are thinking about it as well, how we can do a better job of communicating that with people, because great resources that nobody accesses or such a small number of people access, we kind of pulling that thread all the way through the end to make sure they're connecting with that, I think is so valuable.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for your time this afternoon. There's just a couple additional remarks, and that is our upcoming events. We have the My Best Workshop 6. It's our final My Best Workshop for taking place on May 18th from 12 to 1 p.m. We will be sharing the early findings of the financial stability scale of adoption assessment data during that webinar workshop, in addition to sharing some additional tools on how to sustain this work beyond June. And then in June, on June 7th from 1 to 2:30 p.m., we will have the My Best Milestone celebration, where we will collectively celebrate all of the impressive work that all of you have invested towards students and the work of student success over the last couple of years. I will be sure to share this PowerPoint along with the recording within the next week or so, and we'll be sure to include Candy's information for all of you to reach out to her with any questions about My Leap. And with that, I will give you a couple extra minutes to your afternoon, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It was fun seeing two of you, Precious.
Yes, it was great seeing you too, Linda.
Sometimes I wasn't sure if it was live or recorded, but
Yeah.
you have such a nice presence that it was fun to see two of you. So have a
Oh,
good afternoon.
you
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Bye.